Hello, EDS. I wonder if we can try godly play from Abuna's house because we're not going to the church these days. We're staying at home to keep ourselves and our friends safe. So I have here, I know you all know the desert box back at school at EDS. I have here the desert box of Abuna's house. And you'll see that the sand is a little bit darker than you remember, but I think it works to tell our story all the same. Remember, when we look at the desert box in EDS, the desert is a dangerous place, and it's cold at night, and it's hot during the day, so you have to wear lots of layers of clothes so that you don't get too cold at night and so that the sun doesn't burn your skin during the day. And it's dry in the desert, so food doesn't grow there and there isn't water to drink. And also, when the wind blows, the sand changes shape, so sometimes you get lost and you can't tell where you are. I want to tell a story today about the people of God. And you remember the people of God. We have different people of God here in the house than we have back at EDS. And I have here the people of God. And so they went into the desert. Remember, they were in Canaan. And in Canaan in the desert, there really wasn't anywhere for them to, they didn't have any food, and they were cold, and they didn't have enough to eat. And they wondered what they would do, how they would get food, and how they would get water. And so the people of God started to go towards another land. And they traveled to another land. And that land was called Egypt. See, and they traveled across the desert. And they all followed Moses. Moses was their leader. Moses was especially close to God. And then finally, they got to Egypt. And there they were in Egypt. And in Egypt, there was a king called the Pharaoh. And when they got to Egypt, they were trapped there. And they couldn't leave Egypt. The Pharaoh, the king, they had food and water to drink and eat. So they had plenty to eat and plenty to drink, and they had work to do. But they couldn't go home. They couldn't leave. They were trapped. And so Moses, remember Moses is their leader, Moses went to Pharaoh and asked them, please let my people go. And do you remember this story? What did Pharaoh say? I know you remember it, so say it with me. Pharaoh said, no. And so Moses went back to the Pharaoh and said, Pharaoh, let my people go. And what did Pharaoh say? Pharaoh said, no. Pharaoh told them when to get up in the morning, when to go to bed, what they could eat, and when. And so Moses went again and again. He said to Pharaoh, let my people go. And what did Pharaoh say? Pharaoh said, no. Then one day, something terrible happened, and lots of terrible things happened in the land. But one day something really terrible happened. All of the oldest children, oldest boys in the house, and even Pharaoh's oldest son were killed. They died. And so then when Moses went to Pharaoh and said, Pharaoh, let my people go, Pharaoh said, okay, you can go. And so the people were going back. They were going back to where they were to be free in the land of Canaan. And they traveled back because Pharaoh said they could go. And so they moved and they all ran away from Pharaoh. But then Pharaoh changed his mind. And he came after them with his horses and his chariots. Chariots are wheeled carts that are pulled by horses, and people ride in those wheeled carts. And so they chased after all of the people of God. And they came to a river, and they couldn't cross it. and the chariots and the horses were coming and coming and coming, and the people were very scared. And they said, Moses, what do we do? Well, that's when Moses, who always was very close to God, Moses and God came so very close when God and Moses were at the water that Moses knew what to do. And then the water opened up and there was a dry land, and the people ran through. They ran through that dry place in the water, and they escaped from Pharaoh, and they escaped from Egypt, and the king, who was called Pharaoh, and all of the men and all of the horses and all of the chariots were coming behind them, and they ran. That one looked scared. And they ran. That one was running really fast. I think he's happy to be gone. And then guess what? The waters closed right up again. And then Pharaoh and the army and the horses and the chariots could not get the people of God. And you know what happened then? The people of God were so happy, so very happy, that Miriam, who is Moses' sister, Miriam led the people of God in a dance. You see that? They were all so happy to be free. Isn't that wonderful? So I wonder, what do you like best about this story? I wonder if you were running away across through the water, the parted water, what would you feel? Would you be happy or would you be scared? I wonder what these people's names were. I wonder what part of that story that you like the best. I wonder whether there's anything in the story, any part of it, maybe the Pharaoh or the river or the people of God, is there anything in the story that we could leave out and still have the whole story? What do you think? And do you remember what we say at the end of the story and at the end of chapel? I know you do, even though it's been a long time since we've had the desert box. We say, Amen.